Raise our voices and sing together. Let's all take a few moments to be in the silence. Press your hands against your heart. And then press your other hand against the hand that's against your heart so that you feel your heartbeat. And as you feel your heartbeat, imagine that you're filling your heart with love and light, pulling in love and light from source energy in through your crown chakra to your third eye and down into your heart, where you just hover there with the healing of love and light and gratitude. Thinking of the words of this song, here's my heart, Lord, here's my heart. Fill my heart with the love, the compassion, and the kindness, the forgiveness, and the understanding that you would have me extend out to my brothers and sisters. And as you feel your heart beat against your hand, send that energy out into the world, into the community, over your loved ones, over your unloved ones. Imagine that you're just sending love and light from your heart out into the world, receiving it from source, allowing it to come through your chakra system, but cooling here in your heart, and then sending it out into the world. Spending a few moments just remembering who you are, that regardless of the name you were given, that you are beloved, that you share that name with everyone who's ever walked this earth. The people you love are your beloved. The people you don't love are God's beloved. We still share that ancient place of remembering that we are here to return to. We're here through this course to remember the essence and the truth of who we are. Beyond personality, beyond external appearances. We're here to remember that we have the capacity within us to love deeply, to rise higher, pray harder, to love steadily, forgive readily, and with that energy we continue to interact with everyone we come in touch with, in contact and circumstance, regardless of whatever is going on. We have that remembering. So we extend our prayers to our own individual ideas of what needs to rise higher within us. And we pray for the removal of blocks, the removal of any blocks to our own capacity to love, to forgive. And we send our love and prayers out to the people of Miami, especially to the area of Surfside, where the search and rescue has halted temporarily and perhaps permanently, knowing that there's much sorrow. We send compassion, we send prayers, we send hope for the healing of hearts and minds. So let's take a nice deep breath together, all of us joined in unity. The unity of our oneness, of our remembering, of our sacred companionship. And we begin this evening now, grateful to be together, grateful to have a spiritual family, grateful to have one another. But we don't have Tanzua. We don't have Tanzua tonight, so no one is monitoring. If you guys have questions or comments, I'll check them later. And I'll cover this up so you don't get disturbed by the lights. All right, welcome everyone. Good to be together. So it's July 2021. To me, that's just like amazing, because in 2020 seemed to be like the longest year of our lives, and then 2021 is just zipping, just so quick. Like, how did we end up here July 1st, 2021. It's just here. And it reminds me of what, not just what the Course says, but what many of the mystics' paths say about how time is so relative, that time is not really linear in the ultimate sense of how we function through eternity. And this is sort of how it is, it's like, what is time? We were just in the middle of COVID. I was looking at a report today, and it said that July 2020 was the worst the worst month for Florida as far as COVID numbers go. It was our highest number of death, and it was our highest number of new reported cases. So I started thinking about July 2020 and how we were functioning as a spiritual family. A lot of time I was alone in my little home chapel because of the fact that I was a frontline healthcare worker, and I had a lot of COVID exposure. So I was always like, nope, we're not meeting, nobody's coming over, I'll be in the back there. And in addition to that, we always we say, oh, well, next week we'll meet, back in the location where we used to meet. And then we would find out that the numbers had gone up. And we just continue to just adjust however we could. But in July of 2020, there was other things that were going on. In addition to the fact that I was a frontline healthcare worker, there was the issue of identity theft, which I found out the hard way because I never received my 2019 tax return. It was the hacking that was taking place in multiple levels, which I guess is the same identity theft person. I don't know, because we haven't found out yet. And then what happened after that was all that hacking was taking place, and then the people who were hacked through my hacking somehow decided that I was the hacker. And after that, the whole John Smith thing happened, because there was a person who I have yet to reveal, but many of you already know who it is, but has inspired the John Smith character. So all that happened in July. All of that happened in July 2020. So as I was thinking about that today and reviewing it, I started getting upset again. Like I had like a reactivation of some of my upset around that, because it was never resolved in the ego-pleasing way. Remember, I said to you guys, and I said it right here, it's on one of the live streams, that I will not, we were doing a class that was do not defend, do not attack. In my defenselessness, my strength lies, right? And a lot of people have a hard time with that lesson, because it's like, why do I have to be vulnerable? And the idea of what the Course is saying is, it's just that our ego's perception of vulnerability, and it's our ego's desire to retaliate and to defend ourselves and to counterattack. And I remember saying that, and that was on the heel. When John Smith was on the live stream trolling us that night, and I was saying that I was going to make a commitment to not defend, not attack, to pray harder, and to not reveal the names of the people who were John Smith and company, right? A lot of that has to do with the fact that I really wanted to put this to the test. I wanted to challenge myself, but I also didn't want to do any harm, right? Because there are people who go to that person's church and community, and they know each other, and I did not want to make further issue that would not be just about me working through what I was going through, but to hurt other people as well, because that was not my intention ever. So all that to say that I ended up today feeling like, well, I wish I did retaliate. I wish I did, because my ego was not satisfied. My spirit is pleased with myself. My spirit knows. I'm hoping, hey, right? Isn't it true that at this point, my spirit would be in a better place in terms of growth for not having done all that stuff that I could have done. But my ego got a little activated today, and I started getting a little grumpy, and I started getting a little back in my head. And then, like what happened to you when you were looking for, Reverend Lisa was just telling us earlier how she was looking for a sign of communication with her auntie who passed away 6 months ago, and then there it was when you picked up A Course in Miracles, right? The exact same thing happened to me today. Here I am in my grumpy pants, and I'm thinking like, well, I still have not gotten justice, hasn't been, all that stuff to my ego. It's an ego, right? Not my spirit, because my spirit knows better. Although I don't, how often do we really listen to that? I mean, we have to really get it on some level that it's really about overcoming our ego's issues. So how did I get it? By opening the Course in Miracles and realizing that we are in a whole new section. We are now moving into 20 lessons that will complete part 1. Completely wrap up this entire first section of the book that is geared toward the dismantling of everything that brought the ego into place in the first place. The way we think, the way we feel, the way we conceptualize how the world should be. All of that is driven by subconscious programming, trauma, emotional upsets, all of which the ego holds on to and goes, here, look, remember this? Do something about it. Fight, retaliate, defend, all of that. So I pick up the book today, and here we have an unusual thing. We have an introduction to the next 20 lessons. Why is that unusual? Because the author of the book, Jesus, who's channeling to Helen, for the first time makes an introduction. That's how important these next 20 lessons are. So if they're that important, it must be worth spending a moment with them. And it must be worth using it as an opportunity for me to remember that I don't have to appease my ego's desire. I have to appease my spiritual commitment, and that's where I find rest. That's where I find peace. That's where I find a true satisfaction of being. So this introduction is on page 336 in the workbook. It says, our next few lessons make a special point of firming up your willingness to make your weak commitment strong. I was like, how did you know? How did you know? I was having such a bad day. And what was happening? I was starting to feel weak. My commitment was starting to weaken because I was feeling as though I needed that justice. I needed that defense. Who's going to rise and defend me? And then I heard this from the voice that I needed to hear. Our next few lessons make a special point of firming up your willingness to make your weak commitment strong. Your scattered goals blended into one intent. You are not asked for total dedication all the time as yet. But wouldn't that be great? I mean, wouldn't it be great if we could just be in that state of dedication all the time? Just constantly, like a Sufi master, just like, this is how I'm living my life. I'm in a state of dedication. And having those memories and having those thoughts and having those reignited emotions are just something that I can watch and wash and let it go through me and not have it activate any emotion at all, because I am in such dedication. I saw something once that said, run as fast as you can to God, and whoever wants to keep up with you, keep them in your life. Keep that in your life. So we just have to be in that dedication. Just whatever I'm doing, wherever I'm going, it is my spiritual dedication that leads me and propels me and inspires me. And he's saying you don't even have to do all that yet. And I'm saying, well, I've been doing this for almost 30 years, so I'd like for that to be it. I'd still like for that to be it. It says you are asked to practice now in order to attain a sense of peace. Such unified commitment will bestow, even if only intermittently. It is experiencing this that makes it sure that you will give your total willingness to follow the way the Course sets forth. Now, understanding that this was done day by day by day after the text had already been channeled. So this is years later, right? Because Helen started in 1965 and went on for 9 years. She channeled this material for 9 years. So the text came first. So now we're talking, maybe 7.5 years later, and he's still going, yeah, I know it's just intermittent, but let's get down to some dedication around your practicing. Our lessons are now geared specifically to widening horizons and direct approaches to the special blocks that keep your vision narrow and too limited to let you see the value of our goal. These are the blocks that we work on through our heightening of awareness heightening awareness of ourselves to know what is it that I have that is used, what is within me that is blocking my ability to truly forgive this past. Obviously I haven't, if I got all agitated today, right? So what is my block to that? We all have to know what our own blocks are. That's why we have the monthly full moon cleansing ceremonies, to look at our blocks and to truly do rituals around releasing them, acknowledging them. That's part of what's great about having a spiritual practice, is that we don't just read the book, we make a commitment to living a book. We practice, we look at the lessons, we integrate them, we apply them throughout the day. Coming up, probably I think it's almost another 100 lessons. Lesson 284 talks about how we move through stages of working our, whether it's A Course in Miracles or any spiritual practice. How we go through the process of reading it, and then maybe just considering it, and then making some special applications, and then thinking that's not everything should apply to me. You know, we make these little special provisions. Well, I can forgive this, but I can't forgive that, and we start making some adjustments. But then we move further into integrating all of it and letting all of it be a way of life until we accept it and live it. And that's what we're working toward. But first we have to know what our blocks are. We have to know, we have to look, we have to acknowledge, we have to look deep. We have to become hyper-vigilant of ourselves and self-aware, self-realization. Words alone cannot convey the sense of liberation which their lifting brings, lifting the blocks. But the experience of freedom and peace that comes as you give up your tight control of what you see speaks for itself. Anybody have a little control issue here and there? No. Anybody? No? Never. Never? Your motivation will be so intensified that words become... We just had a little husband-wife issue back there. That's okay. What? That's what was funny. The experience of freedom and of peace that comes as you give up your tight control of what you see speaks for itself. Your motivation will be so intensified that words become of little consequence. You will be sure of what you want and what is valueless. And that's so true, right? We start noticing the difference between what maybe we used to put value on it at another time. Maybe even a sense of needing to control. Or maybe even just, you know, because I work in a place where we're high stress. It's not as high stress as it used to be, thank God. You know, now that COVID is not as much of an issue. We don't have a COVID unit anymore. We've lifted some of our restrictions. But when people are stressed and you know, they complain, and they complain to each other, and sometimes the complaint is about you know, management or finances or whatever. And sometimes it gets personal toward other people. You know, they get upset with each other, and it can take on a life of its own. Right? That upset can take a life of its own. And it may be that there was a time when you really had put a lot of value into being able to vent your upsets. And now you're noticing that maybe you don't have that so much. You know, you're thinking, well, that's valueless. You're starting to notice that the things that used to motivate you to maybe even say something unkind or to do something that wasn't of your highest good is that you don't have so much value, you don't put so much value on it now anymore. Most of the time it has to do with interactions, you know, personal interactions with one another. But we can determine that for ourselves, and we have to be on the outside looking in at ourselves, watching what we do and how we do it. And starting to notice that there's a change. Arguing, oh my God, right? Like arguing with someone because you want them to know that you're right about something, you've determined that you're right, and you want to make that argument, and that can go on for a while. And at some point you realize, I don't have so much value in needing to be right in this particular argument. In most arguments. Yes?
This is from Waltman's book, but it refers to lesson 16, and it says then, fear not that you will be abruptly lifted up and hurled into reality. Time is kind, and if you use it on behalf of reality, it will keep gentle pace with you in your transition.
Time is kind.
That's so cool. It's like in lesson 6, it just like, you know, lesson 6, and here we are, 181. But it's still the same thing, And I just think it was like a warning then, and it's still a warning now.
Well, right. It's interesting because when you go back and you look at those early lessons, they start to make more sense.
Right.
Not as you read the lessons, but when you get to the point where you're actually applying them. Even if it's years later, because I've been reading this a long time. And there was a point in time when I started having ahas, starting the lessons all over again. It's a new year, and now suddenly it's making sense. Because we don't put so much value on the things that are disruptive to our spirits anymore. Which would mean the value that our ego was propelling us toward, the things. And so we start our journey beyond words by concentrating first on what impedes your progress still. Again, this is about having inner awareness, self-realization, and a willingness to really dig deep, become your own inner archaeologist, right? To really look deeply in at what it is that needs to shift within yourself. It may be there, where I lost the line. Experience of what exists beyond defensiveness remains beyond achievement while it is denied. It may be there, but you cannot accept its presence. So we now attempt to go past all defenses for a little while each day. For a little while each day. I love this guy. He's so gentle, right? He's so gentle. So just a little bit each day. It's like having a coach. It's like having a coach. Did you ever go to a yoga class where you just couldn't imagine getting into a particular asana, right? You just can't imagine. And you see everybody else is all twisted, and you're like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that. And then you have a yoga teacher that's like, no, it's okay, just a little bit each day, just a little bit, because you can move. Your yoga teacher knows the capacity of your body, right? All you know is the limitations of what you feel in that moment. And that's like this big brother Jesus. He's our coach. He knows the capacity that we have within us to move beyond our defensiveness, beyond our blocks. And he said, just do a little bit each day, just stretch. All of life is like a yoga stretch. Stretching into a difficult pose. So we now attempt to go past all defenses for a little while each day. No more than this is asked, because no more than this is needed. It will be enough to guarantee that the rest will come. So the first lesson that we get in this new section of 20, is lesson 181. So I'm going to look at that with you, as well as a little bit of what Wapnick has to say about it. The first thing it says is, I trust my brothers. We're at 181, it was yesterday. I trust my brothers who are one with me. Trusting your brothers is essential to establishing and holding up your faith in your ability to transcend doubt and lack of sure conviction in yourself. When you attack a brother, you proclaim that he is limited by what you have perceived in him. He is limited by your perception. You do not look beyond his errors, rather they are magnified, becoming blocks to your awareness of the self that lies beyond your own mistakes and past his seeming sins as well as yours. Now, I think this is really interesting because all of us immediately, if we wanted to, could come up with someone that we don't think fits the bill, right? Like someone that we could say, I can't trust that person, and I do know that this person has done these things, and we can list their faults and be upset with them and have a really hard time seeing beyond those things. So I like what Wapnick says. I'm going to get to this in a minute. But the thing is that there's other people who may see that same person and not be upset by their qualities. Everything is our own perception. Our upset with any particular person might have to do with their behavior, a specific behavior that was an interaction with you, or it may just have to do with a personality conflict. They might just rub you the wrong way. And I've told this story at a time when I was with a group of people, and there was this one person who was like really sort of crass and rude, and just was telling stories that were, I don't know that I can even describe it in a way that makes sense. It was just somebody who was bothering me at the time, like the way they were presenting their stories. And then there was somebody, and in my head I started getting into my judgment about it. But there was this other person there who was just like so enthralled with the stories and how the person was telling the stories. I was like, oh, I love that about you, you know? And I was like, isn't that interesting? Like here I'm all agitated in my judgment, my self-righteousness, and this other person is having the time of their life because they're enjoying that person's presentation. So it is our perception. It always comes back to our perception about what's going on with our brother or our sister. But then you might say, oh, but what about this particular thing that happened? This was hurtful, a particular attack, right? Like the one that agitated me today. I was thinking about circumstances and it was bringing up upset in me. So here's what Wapnick has to say. And this is just, I was really happy with what he had to say because it helps us make it more real. So once again, for those of you who don't know about this, this is Journey Through the Workbook of A Course in Miracles by Ken Wapnick. He also has a series called The Journey Through the Text, where he goes through the entire text. But this is every single lesson, and this was my 20-year anniversary gift from Reverend Lisa and Captain Paul. It's a whole big-ass volume of books. Okay, lesson 181. I trust my brothers who are one with me. Now, this is what Wapnick says. Let me begin by stating that this does not mean you trust your brother's ego. We are trusting the essence of what God created, the truth and the ultimate truth of who anyone is. That is what and who is one with you. Not the ego. Not your ego clashing with the other ego. There's a lot of that going on because that's what we're working on. We're working on our specific challenges around ego interactions. Special relationships. Special relationships are about ego interactions. Okay, so this is what he says. It would be foolish to invite a kleptomaniac into your home and leave and not lock your house at night in a high crime area or leave your car unlocked when you park in the middle of a large city. Then he talks about a situation when a friend of mine who was a long-term student of A Course in Miracles, a friend of his, not mine, A Course in Miracles, had been in a business arrangement with another Course in Miracles student, and they came with this problem. So it became obvious that his partner was stealing from him. And even though they were both Course in Miracles students, this one guy had an issue around honesty and integrity and was stealing from the business. And so the guy who came to Wapnick wanted to know how to handle it from a spiritual perspective and from a Course in Miracles perspective. He said, in speaking to me, my friend tried valiantly to look at the situation spiritually and to speak of it only in non-judgmental terms, but it was obviously he was hurt and angry. I finally said to him, look, in the eyes of heaven, this person is the Son of God, but in the eyes of the world, he's a crook. It's not helpful to deny the worldly truth, right? Facts. So it says, we trust that the perceived sin cannot affect the peace of God within us. So that's ultimately what we're really aiming for. So someone stole from you, someone hurt you, someone slandered you and created John Smith, you know, and whatever it is that is hurting you, hurting your reputation, hurting your heart, even hurting you physically, is a perceived sin of what's going on between egos. And so it's saying we're not denying that those things didn't happen in your experience, but we are denying the right to condemn. We have to deny that right, because in condemning our brother, we condemn ourselves, right? So it's not that we're not hurt, it's not that we don't have judgment in the moment, but we're looking to see how we can shift our own hearts. Like he says, don't leave the door open if you have a kleptomaniac. Jesus is, yes?
Is this a good time to comment?
Sure.
So, I had a profound experience with my brother, literally my brother.
Your biological
My
brother.
biological brother, who is the person I have felt probably most hurt by, wounded by in my life. And he called me yesterday at a time when I was really not feeling positive. but I resisted the temptation to vent.
Mm.
I've been working on not doing that, and I kind of blew it off. But so he like sort of was questioning me, and I said, you know, I'm very stressed out. So he goes, well, tell me, you know, why you're stressed out. I said, no, I don't think you want to hear that. So he said, something, you know, like people think they know what we want to hear or whatever. And I said, well, you know what it is? I'm really tired. So I'm more tired than I am stressed. So maybe if you want to talk tomorrow, you know, we can speak. Then he started telling me about things he did yesterday where he really like was very generous to people. He's not I haven't seen him generous to me, and it really touched me,
Mm.
and I was happy for him.
You were
I was
able
like,
to see him differently.
Nevin, that was so nice.
Mm.
I so appreciate it. I'm so glad you told me. And then he said, at the end of the conversation, well, maybe tomorrow you'll feel better and you'll have a better day or whatever. And I said, and maybe tomorrow, I don't know how I put it, but maybe I said, and maybe tomorrow you'll do more things that are generous. So he called me today to see how I was doing. I just want you to know, my whole life, I can count the number of times I felt my brother had good will for me. And
Well,
today was certainly an experience. Can I just a little bit more? So he asked me what if I got stuff done and how I was doing and whatever. And then I said, no, the real question is, did you show generosity or whatever? And then he told me things he did. I said, well, that was for you. You did your laundry, but did you do anything for anybody else? He goes, well, I called you.
Mm.
And I said, I take it. And it really touched me. But
What I love about that conversation is that you set the tone in the beginning in a very kind way. You know, if you already had issues with your brother, you were tired, you could have just been, you know, grumpy and agitated with him, you know, but you let him know. You let him know that you're willing to have this conversation at another time, but then you open space to let him have the conversation right then and there, you know, and that could have been very different than what might have happened even 6 months ago.
definitely.
You know, 6 months ago you might have just brushed him off. And the thing is the self-awareness, you know, the self-awareness of realizing that, you know what, I'm agitated, I'm not in the best of mood, this is not my best favorite person, but you chose compassion, you chose kindness, and you extended
And you know
it, and he
what's
gave it back to
interesting?
you.
You know what's interesting? Just earlier this week, I was feeling stupid for trying to have goodwill for my brother. I was feeling like I was a fool, like a little bit like what you said. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
but now you've seen the results, you've seen the fruits of that.
and I'm glad for what you said earlier too about choosing not to vent, because I've been really working on that. But it doesn't always feel exactly, you know, gratifying in the moment.
That reminds
I know,
me
I know.
of God knowing what you're trying to say, but you don't know what you're trying to say. But God knew what was going on in you even last week when you were feeling what you were feeling, and took that, the Holy Spirit just kind of took it and worked with it through you and your brother, and voila.
You know, it's interesting because
Pretty powerful. If you hadn't had those feelings and released
she set
them
the
to God.
stage, she set the tone.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And that was when you were feeling, hey, you know, but still not put it out there. There's no longer stopping it. Put it out there, and I think Spirit just said, okay, I got it.
And
She's got
you know, it
he's
says
got it.
that words are of little consequence now. And it's interesting because the words we use can have great consequence. And it's reminding us. Yeah, but look at what happened earlier this evening. I was talking to you guys. I was having, before we get together here, we have conversation. And I was talking about something, how I was feeling. I was confiding a little bit. And I was looking at Lisa, because you had said something. I said something back to you. And I looked over at Stephanie and I said, oh, are you praying for me? Or whatever I said to you. And you said, yeah, how did you know? But it was like we had this non-verbal communication. And then she told me what was going on in her head. And it was like, I heard it. But if I had not said out loud that I was hearing it, neither one of us would have articulated. So it's amazing what can happen beyond words. And what happens beyond words is often what is the formula for what occurs later. So when you were thinking about your brother and feeling foolish last week because, oh, I've been vulnerable to him, or whatever it was, everything turned around. Everything turned around because you turned around. Because you shifted. Jesus is not saying that to trust the people, Jesus is not saying to trust that people will always be loving, but only to trust that beyond the ego's darkness, the light of Christ still shines in them, in everyone. Say it again. Jesus is not saying that to trust people, that people will always be loving, but to trust that beyond the ego's darkness, the light of Christ still shines. What enables us to trust that the light of Christ shines in our brother is understanding that this is the only way we will remember that the light shines in us. That's like a deep breath moment. Let's take a breath. And you found it to be true in your actual brother, in your interaction with your brother. Okay, let's look a little bit more. Let's dig a little bit deeper. Perception has a focus. It is this that gives consistency to what you see. Change this focus, and what you behold will change accordingly. Your vision will shift to give support to the intent which has replaced the one you held before. Remove your focus on your brother's sins, and you experience the peace that comes from faith in sinlessness. This faith receives its only sure support from what you see in others when you look past their sins. What sins is being talked about? No, beyond your perception of sin. When the Course talks about sins, it's almost saying it like sort of tongue-in-cheek. It's your perception of what you see as a sin in your brother, what you're calling a sin. For their mistakes that focus upon are witnesses to the sins, quote-unquote, in you. And you will not transcend their sight and see the sinlessness that lies beyond them. So the idea is to get to a point where you see everything as an opportunity to reflect back on yourself. Even if it's something that you wouldn't do. You know, if you're out in the world and you hear somebody, making a fuss, and you're thinking, well, I wouldn't do that in public, but have I done it on some other level? Anything that we see that we're in witness to is an opportunity for us to look deeper within ourselves. I found this quote today. I sent it to you guys who are on the text. No, did I? I don't know. Maybe I didn't. No, I posted it on Facebook. That's what I did. I posted it. It says, opinion is the lowest form of human knowledge. It requires no accountability and no understanding. This was really helpful for me to come along to this, because it was the unkind opinion of others that created the character of John Smith, right? So I was like, phew, okay. Opinion is really the lowest form of human knowledge. It requires no accountability, no understanding. Because you can say anything about anybody. You're not accountable, right? You're just putting stuff out. The highest form of knowledge is empathy, for it requires us to suspend our egos and to live in another's world. It requires profound purpose larger than the self kind of understanding. Profound purpose larger than the self. Empathy requires us to suspend our egos and live in the other's world. It requires profound purpose larger than the self. Well, it just so happens that the Course addresses empathy. Chapter 16. You don't have to look for it because it's going to be one line. Chapter 16, the forgiveness of illusions, starts with true empathy. And what it says, the capacity to empathize is very useful to the Holy Spirit, provided you let Him use it in His way. So what that is saying, what the Course is saying, what this lesson is saying, that for us to truly connect with another in the light of seeing them as a brother and as a reflection and as an opportunity to bless them, to see past their egos, to be past our own egos, is to be able to understand from an empathetic perspective who they are. And then to go even deeper to realize who we are. that they were reflecting something for us, an opportunity for us to look deeper within ourselves. Can I have a time check, please,
7:47.
So let's go to paragraph 4 in lesson 181. A major hazard to success has been involved with our past and future goals. We have been quite preoccupied with how extremely difficult the goals this course is advocating are for those that we held before. And you have been dismayed by the depressing and restricting thought that even if you should succeed, you will inevitably lose your way. This is not telling us we're going to lose our way. It's telling us that we're afraid of losing our way, that we are afraid of digging so deep. We're afraid of moving into this realm of complete dedication, thinking, who am I? Who am I? How will I be able to sustain this? Well, remember what the introduction says. Just do a little every day. Just do a little every day. You don't start a painting by seeing the finished product. You start a painting with a brush and a stroke and a little paint, right? That's where you start. Yes?
Well, Megan says, right after that, he said, many people lament, I will never learn this course. How can I ever lose my monstrous ego? For brief moments perhaps, but then it returns in spades. However, all they really do is make the ego real, telling Jesus to his face he is wrong and they are
Telling
right.
Jesus to his face.
I love that.
Jesus, what am I supposed to do with this monstrous ego?
You're wrong.
I remember one
can't
time-
get rid of
I
it.
know.
Maybe everybody else can, but I can't.
I remember one time I was having a discussion. It was a group of clergy. It was an interfaith clergy group with people from all different religions. And we were talking about Jesus as the person of ancient history. And someone said, yeah, but he only lived to 33. Like some of us, like we're still struggling. We're in our 50s and our 60s, you know? And we were saying, yeah, what would it be like if he had to live longer? Well, the thing is that we're still talking about egos. We're still talking about our physical life and our attachments to it. It's not about how long we live, it's about how we live. It's about how often can we look at that monstrous ego and just say, you know what? You're just a pal on my playground. You're just a pal on my playground. It doesn't have to be an enemy. It's just an opportunity. The ego is an opportunity. It's constantly just sort of hanging around, reminding you of where you were and whatever fear you have about where you're going. And in those moments, you forget to just look up and be still and be where you are. Just be. Just be. So it's one step at a time. I'm going to just zip over to 182 just because you brought it up earlier.
Good with that.
Where was it that you found? Do you remember the line that you liked? I'd like to repeat it out loud for everybody.
It is 1:3-6.
Paragraph 3. Starting with paragraph 3.
Paragraph 1.
Paragraph 1. This world you seem to live in is not home to you. Okay, so this is. I will be still an instant and go home.
Okay.
This world you seem to live in is not home to you, and somewhere in your mind you know that this is true. A memory of home keeps haunting you, as if there were a place that called you to return, although you do not recognize the voice, nor what it is the voice reminds you of. You still feel an alien here from somewhere all unknown. Nothing so definite that you could say with certainty that you are in an exile. Just a persistent feeling, sometimes not more than a tiny throb, at other times hardly remembered, actively dismissed, but surely to return to the mind again and again. I love this paragraph because to me, it reminds me of all the times that I, as a kid mostly, would wonder, like, what am I doing here? What am I doing in this particular world? And also, Paramahansa Yogananda in Autobiography of a Yogi. If you've never read that book, it's so well worth reading. And if you've read it, it's so well worth reading again. Yeah, right? I mean, it's amazing. The founder of Self-Realization, Yogananda, there's a part in there where he talks about being 2 years old and remembering being 2 years old and being like uncomfortable. Like, he was like, what am I doing in here? like recognizing that this was not his home. And we are and it's all the mystic paths will tell you that when you have that alien sensation of feeling disconnected, it's usually because you recognize that there's someplace else that you are meant to be connected to. So if you're still, be still an instant and go home. That means to be still, to have that experience of the holy instant where you get a divine, deep connection to Source, to God, to love, to whatever name you give it. You know, when we talk about calling out the name of God, it's whatever that is for you. It's, the Course doesn't really even tell you what the name of God is. You know, we can just call it Spirit, call it Shiva, call it Buddha, call it whatever is right for you, call it angels. It's not about the semantics, it's not about words, it's about the inner connection, it's about the depth of the truth that you reach within yourself. So I will be still an instant. Why, thank you. I didn't say it. It didn't come from me. So let's look at the very last paragraph from that lesson. It says, "You have not lost your innocence. It is for this you yearn. This is your heart's desire. This is the voice you hear, and this is the call which cannot be denied. The Holy Child remains with you. His home is yours. He gives you his defenselessness, and you accept it in exchange for all the toys of battle you have made. And now the way is open, and the journey has an end in sight at last. Be still an instant and go home with him, and be at peace, O One." Those toys, those are those silly ego toys, right? Our defense mechanisms, our judgments, our fears, those are our childish toys. Let's read that again. The Holy Child remains with you. His home is yours. Today he gives you his defenselessness. There's that word again, defenselessness. And you accept it in exchange for all the toys of battle you have made. And now the way is open and the journey has an end in sight at last. I think with that, we will move on to wrapping it up. If you had any questions, I'll be glad to address them. Oh, you've been watching? Okay, so we did have a monitor after all. So I want to talk a little bit about this this end song that I have for you before I actually play it. Last Thursday, we had a class on your magnitude. Not to be playing small with your spirit, but to accept the magnitude, the capacity of what you really truly have as a spiritual being, as a healer, as an instrument of peace. And the next day was my anniversary, my 21-year anniversary of ordination. And that night we had a gathering on the beach for our monthly full moon cleansing ceremony. And I was speaking with a friend of mine, because I got so many calls and cards and texts, and I was feeling overwhelmed. And it was at one point I was talking to a friend of mine. I almost feel like I can't take it. It's just like too much love is coming at me. It was like, wow. And she said, well, that's the whole point. You know, is you're supposed to be able to accept it. You're moving into a new year. So I started thinking about the year, and I started thinking about all the things that I told you in the beginning of this gathering, about what July was like last year. And so here I was in June, ending that period and moving into a new period of time, moving into a new commitment, a new year of ordination. And she said, yeah, it's like that song, Coming Out of the Dark by Gloria Stefan, back in the 90s. So I said, that's the song I want to share with you guys. Coming Out of the Dark. She's going to tell a little bit of her story. This is from back in the 90s. We're all coming out of the dark. We're moving out of the darkness and into the light. We're moving from whatever restrictions we had put upon ourselves into a new way of being. So enjoy this. And stick around for the end prayer, and we can all wrap it up together.
For me, because I wrote it for all of you, even if you didn't know it. I don't know if many of you know this, but 23 years ago, on March 20th, 1990. I was in a pretty bad accident while on tour, and I broke my back. I was paralyzed. They told me that I would never walk again, I would never have another baby, and that pretty much my life as I knew it was over. But I had a great doctor who also told me that it was all up to me. And I have to tell you that I felt each and every one of those prayers of everyone worldwide that came towards me. I felt like I was plugged into electricity, and I used it in my healing, and I imagined all those wonderful feelings that people sent me so freely from everywhere in the world. I imagined them going into my spine and reconnecting things and putting things back together. I know that now they call it visualization. At the time they didn't have a name for it, but I know it is one name, and that is love. So thank you very much, and this song is for you. Why be unafraid if I'm not of you? Life is not easy, rest is unknown. And up to now, for me it's been hard getting slow. Each and every moment, searching what to believe. Coming out of the dark, I finally see the light now. It's shining in me. Coming out of the dark, I know love would save me. Sharing with
Yeah, truly. Thank you all for being on this journey with me, for all of us moving out of the dark together. I hope you have a very good, happy, safe 4th of July weekend. Stay safe, be kind to animals, maybe not too much noise. If you would like to express financially your appreciation, there will be a link. Thank you so much. There will be a link for your opportunity to do so on the page. And so we will now end with this. God's name cannot be heard without response, nor said without an echo in the mind that calls you to remember. Say God's name and you invite the angels to surround the ground on which you stand and to sing to you as they spread out their wings to keep you safe and shelter you from every worldly thought that would intrude upon your holiness. So I bow to your holiness. Amen to that. God bless you. See you next week.